All right, vetters, hello, welcome. We got a great live episode for y'all today. I have a special guest in the house that's going to be joining us so we can talk UFOs and more, of course, as always. Shout out to the mods who are running the chat. Thank you guys so much. Without y'all, these live streams are not possible because I'm not in the chat. So without further ado, let's welcome our guest here, Mr. Michael Ian Black. Thank you, Michael.
Nice to be back with you, Patrick.
Absolutely. Yeah. Michael and I did an interview back in May. I'll put a link in the description. Please go check that out. Awesome. Great. Will be a little bit different because we're live streaming. I don't know. Does that make you nervous, Michael? Like live
I'm
streaming?
terrified. You can't see it, but I'm trembling over here.
Yeah, absolutely. I saw the widescreen camera shot earlier, so I could see more that the audience can't see. Yeah, no, it's good. I mean, you do a lot of live stuff, comedy. I mean, live is probably what you're more comfortable in, maybe. I don't know. What do you think?
I'm not uncomfortable live. I'm not uncomfortable not live. When you're as dead inside as I am, it doesn't really matter.
Oh, okay. I love it. You heard it here first or second. I don't know. You might have said it before. Yeah, no, that's great. Well, this will be easy here. The veteran audiences, as they'll pile in as we get going. So, look, Michael, I always do a tradition here on these live streams where I'm going to call out where I'm at. You'll tell us where you're at, and then the audience here in the chat will start to put where they're at, and I'll shout it out here. So I'm in Texas. Michael, where are you? Where are you at right now?
Savannah, Georgia.
Savannah, Georgia. Beautiful. All right, chat. Let me know. Where are you guys watching from? Hit me with it. Earth. Okay. Well, that's pretty broad. Detroit, Quebec. We got beautiful Park City, Utah, Wales, Michigan, North Texas here, Charlotte, New York. Look at that. Fort Worth, Africa, Morocco. I love it. Marruecos, Scotland, Seattle, Spain, Zaragoza. Ay, qué bueno. Washington, D.C., Australia, New Jersey, Sweden, Iceland, Agartha. I don't know what that is. DV, Harrisburg, PA, Washington, Boston, Belgium. Okay, look at this, Michael. the Bronx, Bay Area, Florida. I mean, everywhere.
Global community. That's very
Global
nice.
community, my man. Absolutely. Denmark. All right, guys. Well, thank you guys so much. Germany. Look at that. Everyone jumping in here. England. Just cooler places than where I live. But I love Texas. So don't get me wrong.
Have you been to Texas?
Yeah. I did live in Austin a long time, and you pretty much have to ask yourself that, to be honest with you. Because it's a little different. But anyway, yeah, Michael, look, let's jump into this first thing here, man. You have a new show. I've watched your new show that you have on CNN, which is super cool. Bringing back Roy Wood Jr. from The Daily Show. He's coming over. He's leading the show with you and Amber Ruffin. Am I saying that right? Great show. Tell us a little bit about this show, like what it's called. Have I got news for you? Sorry.
Yes, it's a long-running British show. It's been on there for 30 years. It's a satirical news show where they make fun of stuff, and CNN decided to bring it over here. So that's what it is. It's a satirical news show. Jokes, guests. We don't take it very seriously, and we laugh at people who deserve to be laughed at.
Yeah, which is everyone, I think.
Yeah.
Right. No, that's great. How far into this show are you guys?
We've shot 2. So we shoot it every Friday. It airs on Saturday. So today when I'm done with you, I fly to New York. We shoot the show tomorrow. You'll see it on Saturday or on Max on Sunday, I think.
Oh yeah, that's right. Next day it goes on Max. That's right. No, that's cool. Being in that sort of environment, what are some of the key traits from like your personality? Like, what are you trying to bring to the table in that? Like, is it just comedy? You're there for, I mean, like what are you sort of prepare? How do you prepare, I guess, for this?
I'm mostly trying to not get fired. That's my
Yeah.
primary objective. And so far, so good. Secondarily, yeah, I mean, we're trying to make people laugh, but it's not unlike, say, At Midnight or a show like that. It's not exclusively comedy. It's mostly comedy. But like last week, we had a former congressman on named Charlie Dent, Republican from Pennsylvania. And at a certain point in the show, just out of curiosity, I asked him, do you have any votes during your time in the House that you regret? And he gave an answer, and we made a joke about it. But it's like, it doesn't have to be comedy. And sometimes the stories we're talking about aren't necessarily that funny. So, you have to find the balance. And that's what we're trying to figure out. We're only our third episode in, so we're still finding our sea legs. But yeah, I don't really prepare. It's sort of impossible to prepare. It's for Amber and I, it's unscripted. Roy, who's running the show, has a bit more of a script because he's got to sort of keep the thing moving. But for Amber and I, we're basically just reacting.
Yeah, reacting to it. And I noticed there's other panel guests that are
so we have two guests on each week as well. So there's two teams. So I will have a teammate, Amber will have a teammate, and then somebody will win at the end. But the winning or losing is immaterial to the show. Nobody's winning any money. Nobody's getting any prizes. There's hardly even any bragging rights.
Damn it. It's like, whose line is it anyway points?
Yeah. Yeah. It's
right.
like that.
Kind of like that. Yeah. Which is great. No, that's cool. I love the show. I love the setup. It's hilarious. It's great. Yeah. I didn't know there was interviews, which is great. So I'm sort of showing my cards.
Not. I just asked the question. I'm not.
Got it.
I was just like, hey, Chuckles. What do you have any votes you regret? I didn't call him Chuckles. That would have been disrespectful. I didn't do that.
But man, that would have been hilarious. What I noticed on your Twitter feed, you had spoken about like this Dick Cheney thing came up right in the UFO community. He's top of the UFO pyramid. I've covered it on the channel too. And I remember you saying like, oh, I tried to say that in the show. I don't know if it made it or it got cut. Like, you tried to talk about UFOs or anything on there?
Well, Dick Cheney's name came up as part of the news because he endorsed Kamala. And then I threw in that he apparently was also the go-to guy for UFOs, at least according to David Grusch. So that was, I tried to throw that in there. I didn't watch the show, so I don't know whether it made it or not. I suspect not, as I said in my Twitter post.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to hear about UFO shit on CNN. Believe me, I've tried.
That's interesting. So they don't want to talk about it on there, you think?
I mean, it's not that. I'm sure if I had a good joke about it, they would.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, that's a good point for sure. Yeah. I mean, what do you think of just the overall, mainstream media, I guess as we would call it, like their coverage of the UFO topic? Like, how do you see it?
Well, we've certainly seen a huge evolution in just the past couple years, where like I feel like I saw Jake Tapper recently ask somebody about it, and I don't feel like that's the kind of topic Jake Tapper would have covered even a year and a half, 2 years ago. And he asked it with a straight face. We're just seeing it enter the mainstream news media in a way that I don't think we've ever seen, at least maybe not since the 50s, where it's being treated as a topic worthy of discussion and not a topic worthy of derision. And, I know that Luis Elizondo seems to get a lot of flack for reasons that I'm not entirely clear about, although I sort of understand some of them. But I think we have to give him credit more than anybody else for mainstreaming this topic. Obviously Tom DeLonge too, but it was really, Lou who sort of devised the action plan for getting this into the mainstream bloodstream. And I think he deserves a lot of credit for that.
Yeah, no, that's, a great point. He did the Daily Show just recently, right?
Mm-hmm.
Did an interview on the Daily Show. He did
there's not that many
CNN
people
interview.
who can go on the Daily Show and then like the next day go on Donald Trump Jr.'s podcast and have, a serious conversation about, with both of those hosts. So, I applaud him for doing that. Would I appear on Don Jr.'s podcast? No. but I
Yeah.
applaud that, and I don't know what his politics are, but I applaud that he's willing to talk to anybody and anybody about this topic.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. No, man, that's a great point. I've the way I've seen it is he has done just a multitude of different shows, right? Kind of
Mhm.
all over the
He's
board,
done
just to
everything.
get the topic about. Yeah, just to get the topic about, out, excuse me. And I think like the Jake Tapper, question, which I think I know you're referring to, I think what helps legitimize at least the basis for a conversation or discussion is the government involvement with
Mhm.
UAPs right now, right? This legislation they're trying to pass, these UAP hearings, that kind of gives you sort of something to grab onto and play with, right? Like, well, let's start it from here, not from I saw this documentary on Tubi, secret space, bases on the moon. It's like, oh, okay, wait, there's this legislation. Let's talk about this. What's going on with UAPs, right? So I think that helps bring it out into the forefront a little bit more. And maybe that's how Have I Got News for You can cover it, right? This UAP legislation, UAP hearing, which I'm sure something may come up with that, with the hearing, right? I would imagine
Maybe when the
potentially,
hearings happen, yeah, I imagine
right?
that will come
Right.
up.
A little clip or something, especially
Because it's
Nancy
still,
based.
although it's a topic that I take seriously, I think it's still a topic that you can and should have fun with. I mean, any topic is
Absolutely.
is up for comedy, and
Yeah.
this one in particular, just because it's so bizarre
Yeah.
that if you don't have a sense of humor about it, I don't know what you're doing because it's insane.
Yeah, couldn't have said it better myself. Absolutely. I mean, 100%. And just for everyone watching and listening, like the last time you were on, I think we started the interview at least some point along it near the beginning. You've had your own sighting, right? So it's not like you're coming at this laughing at this topic. Not at all. You take it very seriously, in fact. And something I want to bring up, will bring us into our next topic here, which is this article that you wrote for the Daily Beast, where you named um David Grusch like your hero for 2023, right? So
Mhm.
if you want to, I don't know, what was kind of your, I guess, inspiration behind writing that article, and then we'll kind of get into where you see David Grusch now and sort of the gameplay of it.
I thought at the time when he first came out, it was an incredibly important moment for the whole field
Yeah.
because he remains, I think, the highest sort of level intelligence officer who's ever sort of stepped forward from the shadows to talk in great detail about what he learned. The fact that he had to whistleblow and essentially give up his career in government to do this, that requires a certain amount of sacrifice. Um, his testimony under oath in front of Congress, very impressive. I thought not just what he said, but the fact that he said it, the fact that he came in front of a congressional panel under oath and said the things that he said are startling. Those of us who are more into this community were already aware of everything that he was going to say, but the millions of people who were watching or have subsequently watched his testimony, most of them almost certainly were not. And for somebody to get up in front of Congress and say the US has a craft retrieval program and we have recovered biologics, it's an extraordinary statement. Um, I obviously can't speak to the veracity of it, but I certainly can speak to my impression of him, which is that he seemed utterly sincere in his convictions. That doesn't mean those convictions are correct. And in terms of like, what do I think of him now? My feelings remain unchanged. I wish I was seeing more from him publicly. And I don't know why I'm not. It may be that he feels like he did his job and he can move on, or it may be that he's just sort of lying in wait and sort of planning his next moves. I don't know. But it was an incredibly compelling testimony, an incredible important story. And as I said, there was a certain amount of sacrifice involved in that. And so, yeah, I thought it was like a really like important American moment. I mean, global moment too, but for the American ufology community. And so, yeah, I thought for me, that's my hero of the year.
Yeah. No, absolutely, man. Do you think the hearings that are coming up, right? The last one was with David Grusch, and we've got a
Mhm.
new one coming out with Nancy Mace heading it up, who famously asked David Grusch during that congressional hearing last July, about the bodies, right? That clip kind of went viral about that. And I'm glad she asked it that way, to be honest with you, to get that specific, because biologics, it just seems like that could be twisted around, but
Okay,
then
yeah.
like, no, bodies. It's like, okay,
Mhm.
there's no really confusion there. What are some of your hopes with like this new hearing? Do you hope they follow up with, some of David Grush's stuff? Like, hey,
Of
what's
course.
going on with that, or
I
what?
mean, the House hearing to me isn't nearly as important as I'm anticipating a Senate hearing being, for a few reasons. First, the House is just, I mean, they're both dysfunctional, but the
Yeah.
House is so dysfunctional, and the people, Burchett and Mace and Jared, what's his face, Moskowitz, is that his name?
Moskowitz. Yeah. Yeah. Moskowitz. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
like I like politically, they're on opposite sides, Moskowitz and the other two in particular. Um, but I've been impressed with sort of their bipartisan commitment to this topic. That being said, the Senate side to me is where the real action is, because of um, the bill that Schumer and Rounds have put out, and the fact that those guys are all in the Gang of Eight, and I feel like these reps in the House just don't have access to the same information as their counterparts in the Senate, just because they're not senior enough. So I'm far more interested in what happens on the Senate side than the House side, because I suspect the House side will be more of the same. And that's very valuable. Like, that's very valuable. Like, the more you can get these sort of stories and anecdotes and information out there, the better. But I suspect the real action is happening on the Senate side.
Yeah. I mean, you're way more politically like intelligent than I am, for sure, about this. I don't follow politics like at all. I just hate politics so much, but I know you're very much involved in it, which I respect a lot. I agree with a lot of things you say, to be honest with you. Um, how do you see politics in general being sort of injected into ufology? Because I do see people trying to take sides politically within this movement. I've even heard, right, like these rumors, oh, okay, some of these politicians are just supporting this because it brings them support from, the ufology side. But it's like, wait a second, how much support do you think is
Yeah,
coming? Like,
that seems silly to me. I mean, this is such a small community,
yeah,
in proportion to the rest of the nation, and in proportion to issues that are much more prevalent in people's day-to-day lives. The idea of like catering to the UFO community seems absurd to me,
yeah,
particularly because that's why I actually think the Senate side is much more interesting, because you've got the most powerful Democrat in Congress, Charles Schumer, co-sponsoring legislation with Mike Rounds. Why would he do that? That's the thing. That's, to me, disclosure. The fact that Schumer is behind this bill, and has been now a second time, 2 times in 2 fiscal years, to bring this legislation forward, legislation which features the phrase non-human intelligence like a dozen times, a couple dozen times. Why would that person, Chuck Schumer, risk his reputation and his legacy by pursuing something so esoteric and bizarre and laughable to so many people and so many of his peers? Why would he do that? And he says, I'm honoring the legacy of Harry Reid, blah blah blah. No, I don't think so. I think and why would Rubio be on board for this? Why isn't like his political rival Rubio going, Schumer's gone over the edge, Schumer's a nutball? Because
yeah,
Rubio's has the same information that Schumer has. Rounds has the same information that Schumer has. Now Rand Paul is basically saying he's not going to block this thing. Rand Paul blocks everything.
yeah,
Rand Paul is a dickhead, but he's like on board for this. Why?
yeah.
Why? That's, to me, like, Gillibrand, all these people, like, what is it that what information are they seeing that compels them to follow this story through to the end? And I have a hard time believing that there's nothing there, because why would they devote so much time and resources to this? So I say, to me, that was disclosure.
Yeah, no, those are great points. I've often wondered that myself. Why are these people supporting this
And
at
the
this
idea,
level?
like, you're trying to get money for the Pentagon for this? No, come on. The Pentagon has more money than they know what to do with. They're continually authorized more money than they even ask for. The idea that the Pentagon's out there going, give us more money for UFOs? I don't think so. I don't think that's a very compelling argument from their point of view, unless there's some information that indicates that, fuck, we need some more money for UFOs.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the argument that you made, the great point that you made about a lot of these guys would be using their support of something as a weaponization against them, right?
That's what I'm saying. But it's
exactly. And the fact that they're not is a sign of something. No, I agree completely. And I agree with the information that they are seeing clearly, that makes them want to support this in such a way, again, using the verbiage that you stated as well. I agree. But what is it, right? That's the problem. Compared to what Grusch says versus what Chuck Schumer and them are putting out, right, in this legislation, that space in between, right? Does Chuck Schumer believe what David Grusch said and has seen evidence of that? Or is he just knows there's something here, I've been told, but not that far with David Grusch, like that's what I would like to know. What's that space in between?
And obviously those guys can't talk about it because there's no legal mechanism for them to talk about it. So
and we're left in the dark.
We're left in the dark. So I'm following, the legislation battle like everybody is. Like I just want to understand the motivations behind it. I want to see it passed. I want to see what happens if it does get passed, and then I also want to see what happens if it doesn't get passed. Like the craziest thing about this movement is how quickly it's been accelerating, essentially since 2017. Like it feels like it's happening very fast. I mean, day to day, like there's not a new UFO story every day. Why should there be? But within 8 years, we've gone from this being a topic of ridicule and derision to being a topic that's being taken seriously by the most important politicians in the nation. Why is that?
Yeah, that's true. And, oftentimes on this show, we'll talk about, well, what are other governments doing? Where are they at with this, right? And they're also taking it seriously and have taken steps further than what America has, to be honest with you. Some would say that America's catching up to what some of these other countries are doing. They've already accepted that this is a reality, and what are we doing about it? I think we're almost there, right? I think, like you're saying, at the bare minimum, we could agree that there's something things flying around that we don't know what they are, and they're doing things we can't explain. And that seems to be what everyone agrees on. And then maybe the misappropriation of funds to some extent. But does it go to this black program that's reverse engineering some alien craft? That has, to me, I've seen no evidence of that except just people saying that this is going to happen. So for me, like these hearings, I'm not saying it needs to be this one, but I think what really is going to move the needle, and I get wanting to bring people in and put them on record. I get that. But firsthand, like you've touched the craft, you've worked on the craft, you've touched a body, you've seen the body. Not, I heard of a guy who saw the body, not any of, the actual people who have done this. And supposedly these people have behind closed doors testified, given presentations to, maybe Chuck Schumer and the like, right? So that's kind of interesting. When are those people going to come out? Like, what needs to happen? What dam needs to break for them to go, all right, I'll testify now, or whatever?
I assume legal protections and safety, their own physical safety.
That's interesting. You think there could be some sort of, I don't know. Reprisal, retaliation.
I certainly think it's in the realm of possibility. Grusch said it. Luis Elizondo has alluded to it, and he may have even said it. I mean, we've talked about, Grusch, I think, testified that people have died as a result of this, both at the hands of whatever they came in contact with, but also at the hands of our government. I think he testified to that. And if I got that wrong,
he did. Yeah. No, he did. He said humans and like these non-beings, like both, like our own government and the retaliation.
So is that true? I don't know. I don't know. It certainly feels true. There's that whole Richard Doty's story about the dude that he basically manipulated for whatever, a decade or two, who ended up killing himself, right? These things happen.
Yeah. No, that's absolutely. And yeah, that guy's trying to come back into the UFO community, and he's trying to get involved with things
Sure
and
is.
even go talk to Congress. It's like, wait, what?
Yeah, yeah,
Oh
no.
no,
Fuck that
that's
guy.
not
I
good.
feel like his mind's
Yeah.
feeling a bit issue.
Oh,
I
yes.
mean, you have to have. I mean, look, you
Yes.
have to have some credibility in this space for me to take you
Sure.
seriously at all. And I don't feel like that guy does. I mean, his whole job was to destroy credibility. So I don't know why I'm going to invest him with credibility now. I'm not.
I agree. I've always my argument has always been, but like the idea that he would want to come back into a community he tried to destroy and be like,
Mhm.
why doesn't anybody like me?
Right.
Wait a second, like, you know, what do you mean? Why? Like, it doesn't make sense to like go back to the scene of the crime and be like, I'm here again. What's up,
Yeah.
guys? Fresh start.
I mean, if you're the
Let's
arsonist and you want to tell the fire department about exactly how you burned down the house, that's interesting to me. And I'd be interested to
sure.
hear that. But I don't feel like that's what he's doing. So
Correct.
I I
No, I
I
agree. It's
I don't I
so odd.
dismiss him out of hand.
Yeah, I do too, and I think a lot of people do. And again, there's so many people in this field, like, can't it's okay to kind of just put some people, again, do you have credibility in this and who should we be focusing on? And to be fair, there's also a lot of movements. You've got this government legislative movement that's happening, but then you've got citizen, disclosure investigations and the like, right, that are happening that people probably get more out of is more
Mhm.
fruitful because again, we're waiting on the government, right? We're waiting on things they can't say. I can't say that. I can't do that. But, you've got these other endeavors happening that are much easier to get behind and get more information and kind of fill that
Absolutely. The
void.
problem, as always, with those movements is like we can believe sort of citizen advocates and citizen journalists to the extent that we think the evidence that they're providing supports their claims. That's an order of magnitude different than the government of the most powerful nation in the world acknowledging, first of all, that these things are real, and secondly, sort of spooling out for us what exactly they know and how they know it and why they know it and why they have been obfuscating or why they haven't been obfuscating. Like, unfortunately, like the gold standard for disclosure has to come from the government, and really, globally speaking, it almost has to come from the American government. I mean, I suppose China could do it. I wouldn't necessarily trust Russia to do it. I mean, in maybe Canada. I mean, there's other countries that could do it, but I suspect they're all waiting for us to go first for whatever geopolitical reasons they have for doing that. And it really feels like it might happen, which is an insane thing to even
Crazy.
contemplate.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah.
But
No,
it
you're
kind of
right.
feels like it feels to me like the American government is right at the precipice of taking that next step. And the next step in my mind is these not only are these things real, we now can say with confidence they're not human. Like that's sort of the next step.
Yeah.
And then obviously
Correct.
the next and then the dam breaks. And that's
Yeah.
probably why it's so difficult because once you make that acknowledgement, now the genie's out of the bottle and the field just explodes in ways that there are probably secondary and tertiary consequences that we can't quite predict. So from that point of view, you go, well, that makes sense why a government, in particular this government, would be very, very cautious about disclosure because you just don't know how people are going to react. Yes, I know Rand did studies and people did studies and blah, 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 blah. But until it happens, I don't think we really know. Now, I have my suspicions about how people will react, which is
Sure.
that they will go, "Oh my God," and then 24 hours later, Ray J will do something stupid and will be like, "Oh my God, Ray J did something stupid." I don't even know who Ray J is.
Yeah.
I feel like that's an actual celebrity. I don't know.
That's probably an influencer somewhere, right, on TikTok. Yeah, he does cooking videos or something.
But I
Yeah,
mean, I
no,
feel like
that's
that's the
funny.
way it's going to go. Like
Yeah,
because and I'll take it a step further. That's the way it should go. And the reason it should go that way is because for the past however many decades, somebody's been sort of setting the table, or a lot of people have been setting the table for an eventual disclosure moment. Um, I don't think we'd be as freaked out because it's so a part of the culture already. So many people already believe it that next step, I don't think will be too devastating for people. But what happens after that and what happens after that might be. Um, and that's where I think the attention needs to be. Not so much about disclosure, but about what happens afterwards.
Well, that's an interesting point for sure. Absolutely. And I think it's just the world is so big and different in different cultures, and just I think it's just gonna be a mix of things. You're gonna see pockets where it's handled well, other pockets not. Just kind of it is a little unpredictable. I mean, we have a few references of certain things we could go up, how COVID was handled, how
Sure.
certain wars are handled, certain, confrontations, but at the end of the day,
But the difference is like
yeah,
the acknowledgement of these things are not human. The paradigm doesn't necessarily need to be confrontational the way our approach to a disease is going to be confrontational or our approach to a war is going to be confrontational. Like those are oppositional ideas. Just the fact of a non-human intelligence visiting us, let's say, or arising from us, whatever the case may be, that's not necessarily confrontational. Now, if, let's say, the American government is in possession of knowledge that it is confrontational, that there is a sort of whatever brewing, that's entirely different.
yeah,
I know, speaking personally, I don't know why you would come to that conclusion um, if you didn't have some sort of information indicating that. I know like Elizondo and a lot of people who come from it from a national security point of view remain concerned, and they should be. But from
sure.
my point of view, and I think from most people's point of view, it's sort of like, okay, well, they've been here. They haven't been doing shit to us. I mean, maybe the abduction stuff you could argue, but the idea of an imminent invasion or shit like that, like, I don't know. But I'd rather know than not know.
Yeah, absolutely. Um,
I'd like to get my affairs in order. I want it
yeah,
if the aliens are coming and they're mean, I want to start securing my heroin right now because that's something that I feel like I would enjoy. So once I get the
bucket
terminal
list.
diagnosis, let me try
Yeah,
the heroin, you know?
yeah,
I mean,
absolute bucket list. I get
yeah,
it.
let me have a
I
lot
get
of
it.
Ben& and Jerry's in the days and weeks leading up to this alien invasion. Like, I wanna know.
Sure. Yeah, no, that's hilarious, and that's a great point, actually. One thing is to find out, okay, we're not alone. Another thing is to find out, yeah, we're not alone, and watch the skies because they may be coming, or this may be the amount of interruption it would have on your life is really the indicator, right? Like that knowledge, how much interruption comes with that knowledge. Is it just the knowledge? Because you're right, that is completely different than those other situations. But if it comes with this back end of, nope, we have this, and we got to prepare, and that, yeah, I'm with you. It's a totally different, holy shit moment.
And let's say that that is the case. Let's say that, they do know there's a sort of malevolent intention there. Well, wouldn't it behoove the entire world to know that so that we could figure some shit out together?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like
Absolutely.
Reagan's point about, I often think about what would happen if aliens were invading us and how that would unite us. And yeah, I mean, I don't agree with Reagan on that much, but on that I do.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Would it be an Independence Day moment? You would hope, or not. I don't know. I guess I'm different every day. Some days I wake up and I have a lot of faith in humanity, and other days I see things I just have no faith in
Yep.
humanity,
Yeah, I'm the same.
Right. Right. It's kind of just whatever comes up. But look, to this next we're talking about sort of these other endeavors, right, outside of this legislative push or this government push for transparency. There's this new documentary coming out with James Fox. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it. Let me bring it up here.
Okay.
The program, yeah, the program. Um, I've covered it a lot on the channel for sure. There's supposed to be some big things in this coming
He
out, right?
he has said he has
Whistleblowers.
firsthand witnesses, right, in this thing?
Yeah, yeah. People that have never come forward before, right? He's going to do the thing where voices change, shoot from the back, right? Not wanting to reveal their face, but yeah, firsthand whistleblowers never heard from before.
Right.
I don't know, like I love things like this, and I love James Fox, and I love his documentaries. How much of like a difference do you think something like this can actually have? Right, as not just
On its
being,
own, almost none.
yeah, that's
On
interesting.
on its by itself, none, because it will be of interest to people like you and me, and maybe some others who are sort of interested, in a vague way about the topic. But where it can, I think, make a difference is it may give the people in the documentary or others who watch it who have some knowledge the courage to step forward and show their faces and testify to congressional staffers or whatever. So I think it can be helpful in moving people's courage forward who have something to say. And obviously, for the general public, it's going to be really interesting.
Yeah.
But interesting, unfortunately, I think in this space isn't enough to move the ball forward.
Yeah, no, that's a great point for sure. I think James Fox's documentary, The Phenomenon, for instance, is a great like
Mhm.
share with somebody who's like, oh, what's this? Stuff, dude. Watch this documentary. You will get a lot of information and kind
Yeah,
of see where the history is and this. And I think the program, I think you're right. I think it can have that kind of impact to inspire some people who may be watching on the sidelines and go, oh, okay, maybe I can come forward.
yeah. I mean, that would be my
Right.
hope for any sort of
Sure.
documentary like this. And
Sure.
and I'm going to watch it the moment it comes out, and I'm going to be
Yeah.
riveted by it. I can't wait for it.
Yeah.
But will it speak to the larger sort of general population? I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I mean,
Is
one
it
of the
too
things I think
niche?
people forget in this community is how small it is. I mean, because we talk to each other, but I mean, if I talk to anybody about this topic, they generally have no idea what I'm talking about, or they have a
Absolutely.
lot of misconceptions about this topic, which is certainly understandable. Um, Maybe somebody they know had an experience, maybe they have an experience, but they haven't looked terribly deeply into it. Um, so we get caught up in the community about the topic, and I think sometimes we forget that most people don't know anything about this, which is why, like, when I post about it, and I post about it fairly regularly on Twitter, I am sort of careful the way I frame things, because my audience, such as it is, doesn't give a shit about UFOs. So when I introduce information about it, it's generally information at that level for people who don't know what I'm talking, or who wouldn't know about this stuff otherwise.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a
I'm
great
I'm
point.
cautious about it for that reason. Not because of my own beliefs, but just because I know that the people paying attention to me just haven't thought deeply about this stuff at all.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Otherwise, it feels lost, right? Like, what
Mhm.
is this even about? So you just kind of ignore it. And you
Right.
have
If I'm
almost
talking
two
about
million
mansion
followers on
hydrants
Twitter.
on Twitter, people are gonna be like,
Yeah,
"Oh."
yeah, yeah. What is this? Yeah, and maybe rightfully so to some extent.
Yes, rightfully
Right?
so.
Yeah, yeah. That's funny. I mean, again, you have almost 2 million followers on Twitter, so that's sort of a big responsibility. I'm sure you must feel when you do tweet something out, right? Like
No,
that.
I actually
No, yeah.
don't. I actually don't feel any responsibility because I know, let's say 80% of those 2 million followers are either bots or inactive. But for the small percentage of people who are real and are paying attention, yeah, I try to give them good information, but I'm not a journalist. I try to be careful about what I say. Not be The responsibility I feel is to put out good information, and information that I can support, so that when somebody challenges me on it, which they inevitably will, I can say, "Well, take a look at X, Y, and Z." But in terms of,
Yeah.
like, feeling like a responsibility, like a societal responsibility, nah, I don't give a
Yeah.
shit.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I feel the same way. I clearly have nowhere near the reach that you do, but I definitely feel the same way.
Well, you have more interesting lighting, which is maybe
Yeah,
more.
that's the new tagline of Edit. Interesting lighting. Yeah, I love that. No, and that is an interesting point. Like, should people filter themselves of how they bring up this topic or how they talk about this and that? You know what I mean? That's kind of an interesting thread
To
to pull.
me to me, it just depends who you're talking to. It's like, if you're teaching philosophy, you're going to teach it differently to college students than you are to kindergartners,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
most
that's a good point.
people on this topic are sort of, in the elementary school level, like they just, and through
Yeah,
no fault of their own, they just haven't done the research. um,
sure. Yeah.
they're just not as compelled by this topic as you or I are, and I can't get enough of it.
Yeah.
So but I don't expect anybody else to have that level of interest or knowledge.
Oh, absolutely. None of my friends are into this at all. It's just Patrick with his alien podcast. That's how they say it, right? It's a
Yeah,
joke all the time, and
of
I
course.
don't care. Like we just I laugh at what their job is, and we all
Right.
just whatever. In fact, one of my friends yesterday, we were talking. Well, a bunch of us were talking on the phone, and I said Luis Elizondo, blah blah, and my one friend's like, I'm so embarrassed right now. I'm the only one who knows who you're talking about. And I'm sad that I know that name now. You've talked to me so much about it, Patrick, that it has embedded itself
Right.
in me. And I know he's like, I do know who you're talking about actually now. And good, forget. And at the end of the day, people are interested. I
Mhm.
learned a fact recently that was kind of interesting that UFOs are one of the top in the top 3 search terms in the world, right? Behind like adult entertainment, right? It's like one of these things where like, a lot of people are doing it, but they don't admit it, right? And it's
So
kind of like
why
UFOs.
do you think alien porn isn't a bigger
Yeah. It
market?
is,
I mean, it
Michael.
seems like
Apparently
that
you
should be a
haven't.
huge market.
Yeah, it is. You're just not going to the right sites. I can take care
So,
of that.
yeah,
Yeah.
send me that in the chat.
Yeah. Yeah. Pleiadian love. It's a great, yeah. It's yeah. It would be interesting to see some of that. Yeah, I just find that to be the case, especially when you get people alone, so different than if it's a group setting talking about it. And even though there may be jokes, it's one of those things like where it becomes, yeah, but in all seriousness, this XYZ could be true and this is interesting. They're doing this, but people, it's still kind of hovering there and it may
Yeah,
always
well,
hover there.
there still is the stigma. I mean, the stigma has
Yeah,
not gone away. I don't anticipate it going away anytime soon necessarily. But
sure.
as we said at the beginning of this conversation, it's gone down a lot. The mainstreaming of
Oh,
this subject has increased a lot.
absolutely. Absolutely. And look, I think with the election going on right now, that has definitely influenced some of maybe even the mainstream coverage of some of this because the election is just sucking up so much attention from all media, which rightfully so, right? We're in America. It's one of the craziest elections we've ever had. Already a presidential election is so, huge. Add these other elements in, it becomes right. So
Yeah.
yeah, I get it. And I think some of the criticism for why the legislation didn't get passed or whatever, I think just the election has a lot to do. I don't think there's any nefarious reason or anything. I just think the election is sucking a lot of
Yeah.
time and energy out, right? Essentially.
Yeah. I mean, it's very hard to get Congress, I think, to pay attention to anything. And then when you try to get them to pay attention to this,
Yeah.
that's a tough
Another
sled.
level.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, that's tough.
Yeah. I love it. No, you're right. Michael, this was something that kind of reconnected us on Twitter, right? And made me
Mhm.
reach out again about having you on the show was this James Webb thing because I saw you had posted about it, and we had done a video about this, the James Webb and this non-human object headed for Earth and all this stuff. And it was like, oh, they're saying this is happening. That's not what we said in our video. Just we were discussing a journalist who said he had a source that was saying this, and we don't know. And we were just discussing the topic. And I found as time has gone by, I've realized, there's a lot of stuff about James Webb that people just have never heard of, don't know about.
Mhm.
There's all these things. And I personally don't believe there's any object headed for Earth and we need to be worried. I don't believe any of that rumor. But I found this article in Newsweek, and it's just one example of like how much James Webb is out there discovering. And I just think maybe there could be some confusion or writing the backs of some of these discoveries and making it kind of masking it as being something else. Because this is just one example here of Newsweek talking about James Webb. This just came out today, I
Mhm.
think. Oh no, it says update. Oh yeah, it says published.
Yeah.
Talking about this new strange galaxy, right? This light that had been discovered, and look at this beautiful picture of a blob. Like I don't know what am I supposed to do with this picture, but it is interesting.
Blob. Well, I'm just reading the
Yeah,
caption. The galaxy is captured. The light we see in the images come from the galaxy's hot gas rather than its stars. Okay, that's interesting.
yeah. It's this kind of right. This guy says my first thought in looking at the galaxy spectrum was that's weird, right? Which is exactly what the Webb telescope was designed to reveal. So totally new phenomenon, early universe. Again, Oxford University bizarre light signature, right?
Mhm.
And that's some of the stuff that was talked about in our stream and things like that. So I just think I don't want people getting worried or whatever, kind of taking it as fact that there is something from James Webb. Again, I just think James Webb is out there and there's all these things happening that nobody knows about, right? You're not looking into it. But if you just do a quick Google search of James Webb and you see, oh, there's all kinds of things popping off with this and other telemetry or other like telescopes that we're using and whatever systems out in space. So anyway, I don't know.
So the
What did you think
specific
about the James Webb?
rumors that I keep hearing that we talked about,
Yeah.
there's two of them. One
Okay.
is that James Webb discovered, or actually, I think the original rumor is that the ESA, the European Space Agency, at least a couple of years ago, maybe longer, detected what they're calling technosignatures, and that the
Correct.
James Webb Space Telescope has confirmed those, and that Congress has been briefed about this. That's the first rumor. The second rumor is the one that you just said, that there's some massive, and that's always the word that's used, massive object 10 light years out that has been braking and showing maneuvers, and it's not human, and it's heading in our direction. That's the second rumor. I don't necessarily put credence in either of those rumors, but I am interested in how those rumors started, who's repeating them, why they're repeating them, and what if sort of any truth is related to either and or both of those rumors. And I'm no longer, like, I don't know, a few years ago, I would have just dismissed both of those things entirely out of hand. Now, I don't dismiss them entirely out of hand. I still think they're incredibly unlikely. But the fact that, I don't know, this stuff just keeps circulating, I just want to know why. Like, what is it? And it is true that the James Webb Space Telescope did find that chemical in planet Kepler 12b that is only produced on Earth as, by organic material, and therefore there's life on this, and they're doing further tests like that. That's all true. But there's certainly been no confirmation of any sort of extraterrestrial life, let alone technosignatures. But I remain open to it, both because I think it's possible and also because it's just so fun.
Yeah, absolutely. No, for sure. The technosignature is interesting to me because that's a planet that Simon Holland on my show was talking about. Okay, maybe this planet
That's the
maybe has a
British dude?
technosignature. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And the other one is definitely just a source saying something, you don't know who. And yeah, I agree. It's interesting. What is it? I even think the other discovery that you were talking about, the biosignature, right? That is super fascinating to me. That's and they're trying to confirm that, because that would be the closest thing we would have to sort of other life on another planet, because it's not just that we're trying to confirm intelligent life outside of our planet. We're just life in general. Is there an amoeba somewhere else, right? Is
Yeah,
there
we've
just a
never proven that.
something? Yeah, something, a plant somewhere else. Like, we can't even prove that, like, which is, I find absolutely fascinating, to be honest with you.
Fascinating that we haven't been able to confirm that yet.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah,
Even
I
in
mean,
our own solar system, not one planet has a little plant on it. We're the like a little something, little blade of grass, like there's
yeah,
a little water that's, I guess there's water with ice and stuff and Europa and things like that.
Mars
Yeah,
apparently is filled with water,
yeah,
huge oceans.
sure. And the moon, we found
Mhm.
water on the
Yeah.
moon, and yeah, it's like, I guess just that specific um
Well, when you consider, like,
fact.
sort of how far we've come technologically in such a short time, it makes sense to me that we wouldn't be able to confirm it yet. But I think it seems to me it will be confirmed in fairly short order. I would imagine within the next few years. And if we don't find anything, that's also super interesting. Like, either scenario is super, like, that's the thing that's so great to me about this topic, is whatever the explanations, they're fascinating. I don't care if it's the most prosaic explanation in the world. The US has top secret tech and has been hiding it for decades. Okay, well, that's fascinating, and I want to know
Yeah.
about it.
Yeah. I
Like,
agree.
that's,
I
and there's been some sort of enormous psyop on the American population and the global population. Like, okay, I want to know that,
Yeah,
whatever the explanation for these things is, or whatever explanations there are for these things. Like, I
that's what
want to
I
know.
think. I think it's a multitude
Yeah,
of
I
diff
think so
a
too.
mix of psyop, a mix of advanced tech, a mix of some shit we don't know what it is, a mix of the, just kind of personal, people on their own personal journeys within the government. It has nothing to do with some big conspiracy. You know what I mean? Just kind of a mix
And what's
of all
interesting,
of that.
though, is that of all those explanations, that's only about one component of this story, which is the nuts and bolts craft component of this story. But the story, in my mind, is much broader than that. It
Yeah,
relates to the abduction experience. What is that? What
sure.
is that? Because it's
I
real.
agree.
I mean, the experience is real. I think that's beyond doubt. But what is it? What is the nature of it? The historical aspect of it. Like, how has this story been a part of our human culture for thousands of years? It is essentially the same story, and
Yeah.
it gets into myth, it gets into religion. How does this relate to consciousness studies? How does it relate to um, near-death experiences? Like, all of these things, the sort of umbrella term of phenomena, of which, to me, UFOs are only a small part. Like, I, I don't know how many explanations are required to get into all of this stuff, but I think most people in this field believe that there's some sort of connection to a lot of it, if not all of it.
Yeah,
Like,
no,
these
that's a
things seem to be
great point.
related.
Sure. Absolutely. Yeah, I'm interviewing a guy later today named Patrick Jackson who has
Mhm,
a theory, a hypothesis out there. Have you heard of him?
mhm.
Um, that sort of brings everything together, right? This sort of what you might call a theory of everything about this phenomena, but including a lot of paranormal, all of it, essentially
Right.
everything that has this explanation. And I find that kind of interesting. Yeah, I agree. Some of the most interesting parts of this topic aren't really talked about a lot, in my opinion,
And for
which
good
is
reason.
interesting. Sure.
I mean, a good reason to not talk about it is because it's taken so much time and effort just to get people to acknowledge the nuts and bolts aspect of it.
It's a
So
good
then you're
point.
going to muddy the waters, and you go, and I think Yeti is a part of this too. We go, well, hold,
Yeah.
hold on, hold on, bro. Can we not talk about Yeti for 5 seconds? Can we just focus
Yeah.
this little
Yeah.
part right here? Like,
Totally.
you get it, because the people who have worked so hard to bring this topic into the mainstream, I think, are rightfully concerned that their credibility and the credibility field will be entirely destroyed once you start introducing the more esoteric aspects of it, which are just
Mm.
as, if not more compelling than the UFO component of it. So I can
Sure.
understand why Lou Elizondo or Chris Mellon are like, we need to approach this from a national security point of view because it's the only way to get the government interested. And then once we've got that, we can start delving into the deeper layers of meaning here,
Yeah.
because the rabbit hole goes infinitely deep, as you know.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. Yeah, that's a good point. Kind of an example of that might be Luis Elizondo's new book, Eminent, right? Which I do want to get your opinion on that. But I've noticed like him doing a lot of this press. I can't really, maybe one person asked him, but like in his book, he talks about his own, remote viewing capabilities, right?
Mm,
His abilities, these special powers. And, he's on MSNBC, he's on Daily. Nobody asked him about
right.
this thing, right? Like, is it this reason you're giving, right? Like, well, let's not go there. That's gonna take away from this other thing. But in the book, he's writing about it, right? So
Mhm.
I don't know. That's interesting. Yeah. What did you think of his book?
I thought it was really startling in a good way. Not so much because of the content itself, which was, I think, familiar to probably most people, but I thought he did a really good a really good job of sort of laying out the history of this topic in America, and also explaining why he's doing what he's doing. But also, he says a lot of startling things. Like, he put the words in Hal Puthoff's mouth, Roswell was real. So he's basically quoting Puthoff as saying that. Hal is alive. He could refute that. He could say, I never said that. He's not saying that. So to me, it's like little moments like that are startling. where you've got, he's naming names, people that he's worked with. And there are quibbles about like, well, Lou wasn't in charge of ATIP or blah, 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 blah. I don't give a shit about any of that. What I care about is sort of the material stuff, the germane and material claims that he's making. And I haven't heard those refuted. I haven't heard James Lakatsky or Carl Nell or anybody else refuting the essential points that he's making. We're not alone. We're being visited. We're being monitored. Nobody's refuting that. That's why it's startling to me. Not so much for what's in the book, but for the way it's been, people are responding to it. Like if they're attacking him for, oh, you never held this in such position. I don't care. I don't care.
Yeah.
That's bureaucratic stupidity. What I care
Yeah.
about is the specific claims that he's making about this topic, and I haven't heard those refuted.
That's a really good point, actually. Yeah, you're right. Hal Puthoff could come out and say, "I never said that," or "That's not true." And what's funny is Roswell, to me, and as cliche as it is, I guess, is still the most compelling case to me. Period. Roswell. I just find that, and everything behind it, it just seems to be always coming back, about it, and some have said it's sort of, the first one, like the first thing that sort of set this all off and set, all of this into motion, even though David Grusch has talked about this 1933 cache, Italy, the Vatican, which again, I guess that's what, even for myself, starts to become an issue, right? It's like, oh, okay, non-human crowd. But then you start to expand out on some of this other information. It just becomes more detached from the original reality that I accept, right? It just keeps going further and further away. And I'm just like, man, wait, space, bases on the moon. Wait, the Vatican. Wait, they're living underground. Wait a second. What the fuck? Time travel? Like, where do I stop here? Like, how far do I go with this? Like you brought up the Yeti thing. I mean, people bring that stuff up, right? Like, it's like, I don't know how far into it to go. I mean, I've had people on this channel, tell me directly to my face, I've been taken aboard a craft, and I've gone up in it and I've flown it and I've seen people fly other crafts and I've spoken to entities just straight up, and been told they're watching you too, Patrick. They're watching you. They're monitoring you. And it's I don't know how worried to get, I guess. You know what I mean? It's like, how worried? I've seen nothing. I don't see anything directly in front of me. So maybe ignorance is bliss.
I think I think you and I are probably similar, where I keep an open mind about all of this stuff. But in terms of what I'm actually willing to say, I believe, I don't go, I can't get that far yet.
Yeah, me too.
I can get as far as I believe there are things zipping around our skies, flying in our oceans, above our atmosphere, and we don't know what they are. I believe that people believe that they are having communication with entities that are non-human intelligence. I believe that they believe that. And I'm not saying at all that that's not what's happening, but I'm saying I haven't seen enough evidence to support that conclusion. I mean, it was interesting that Lou was talking about that implant. I've seen videos of that implant. That's a great data point. Like I'm happy to have that.
Yeah.
I believe that the government knows more than they're saying, and that world governments know more than they're saying. I think Grusch is probably telling the truth, that there have been recovered materials and that they probably are mostly in the hands of private aerospace corporations who've been working on reverse engineering them and don't know what to do with them. I doubt that they've gotten very far with them, with that reverse technology, because I think we would have seen it commercialized. And I know that there's theories about transistors and blah, 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 but I don't believe that. So I'm willing to sort of believe what I can see enough evidence for that it allows me to believe. I'm very sympathetic to people like Whitley Strieber, and those experiences, which I know are profound and life altering, but I don't know what they are, and I don't think he knows what they are, and so I just keep an open mind about all that stuff. It's not a question of believing or disbelieving. Like in those cases, it's just I don't have enough information to have any conclusions. The things that I can form conclusions about are the things that I feel like I'm willing to sort of go out on a limb and say, okay, this is what I believe.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
No.
I mean, and I'm very suspicious of anybody who claims to know what's going on, because I don't think anybody knows.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of the problem. Like I believe people who have sort of been inside these programs and say, we don't understand it. The government doesn't understand. The government doesn't know what this is. That to me seems more believable than any other explanation.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I feel like you've been inside my head, because that's exactly how I think. Essentially, I don't want to cross the finish line, celebrate early, right?
No.
Like, I want that to be a real moment if I do come to that belief. Yeah, I have seen no direct evidence of anything, but like you said, I'm in support of this main goal of just trying to find out this one thing we all agree on, which is there are things flying around. We don't know what they are, like you said, right? Okay, I'm in support of let's look into that further, and all these other things. Like, I'm with you. I'm just open mind. I let people come on. We talk about it. They tell their story. I let the audience, decide or not decide. I'm with you on the why do I need to make a decision one way or the other, right? Like, why can't I just be like, that was interesting? I don't want to say I don't believe this person or I believe them. I just want to, that was interesting. I don't know, I don't know. Like you said, someone's experience is like they believe that thing happened to them, and I believe something happened to them. Now, is their interpretation of what happened the objective reality? That is where it kind of falls apart, because there's never any direct evidence for things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I'm with you. Yeah, it's an interesting balancing act.
Although I will say, to be fair, there's like in the case of abductions, there often is physical evidence. There often are injuries or cuts or.
Well, that's true. That's a good point.
But are those things explicable by other means? Possibly
Sure.
and probably.
Sure. Yeah, that's a good point, though. You're right.
I'm not willing to. There is evidence. The problem is it's not conclusive evidence, and I don't feel like there's a preponderance of evidence yet in that case for me.
Sure. I mean, you make a good point about the implant. I just had Ron James on, and I exclusively told the implant that Luis Elizondo talked about. We shared a video of it, an interview with the person who had it removed. He told his story of how it happened. He was a veteran at the time. The VA removed this implant. So I'm with you. Like any sort of physical evidence we found, we get a photo, we get a video, we get an implant, we get, radiation marks on somebody or something, right? Like, great, let's look into this stuff, which this perfectly brings us into the last topic that I want to bring up here before we go to a question and answer here with the audience, which is these Nazca mummies, these aliens, right? They've been very divisive since they were presented a year ago. It's been a year now. And in Mexico at this congressional sort of hearing, and these, quote unquote bodies were presented, and it kind of took off from there, and it became very divided. Oh no, this is BS. There's just no way. Other people, no, let's look into it. And as it's gone, as I've seen this story go, I've seen it become more divisive, but I've also seen it people really wanting to look into this and really study this. But also it changed, because the original bodies were like these little 3-foot ones, and then it became, oh no, there's these 6-foot one, they're whatever, right?
I didn't know there were ones that size.
Oh yeah, there's huge ones now. And there's even reports of a giant skull, okay, that's like 10 feet tall, that comes from a giant. They have a skull of, became the issue. It was like, okay, oh, these two bodies, that's interesting. And then no, we got hundreds. And we got this, and we got a giant, and we got wait a second. God damn, So I don't know. And I found this interesting. I'm gonna bring this up real quick. Apparently this was kind of brought out to the public way before this hearing, okay, which is this. So this is on Apple TV. It's called Alien Mummies of Peru. Okay. And this is talking about Maria, the same mummies they're presenting now. right? 5 years later, but this was already something that they looked into. This says a non-human alien mummy was recently found in Peru that could be the greatest discovery of all time. The remarkable ancient mummified body, dubbed Maria, has 3 fingers on each hand. It was discovered in Nazca, Peru. While mummies can excite historians, this particular find may alter the story of human origins forever. Dating back 1,600 years or more, some experts say it is evidence of an ancient reptilian race. Are we looking at the remains of the gods that, according to many ancient texts, descended from the heavens in the distant past? Or are we looking at an alien species that existed on Earth long before humans came into existence? Explore the mystery of the alien mummies of Peru. And then you got this here. So this same mummies that are being presented now were already sort of shown and, brought out. And I guess some of that does worry me a little bit, but at the end of the day, it is something to study. Let's get it in some labs. Let's get some results out. I think the question becomes more, not should this be investigated, but do you accept the results that comes from the investigation, right? Because that becomes, no, wait, that's not a good enough lab, or that's not, we need, okay, we can't keep pushing the goalpost out on this. Where's the line in the sand here? So yeah, what are your thoughts on the mummies just in general? And
I mean, I think like a lot of people, I was and remain skeptical. However, I've been following the story kind of loosely, and everything that, I shouldn't say everything, the preponderance of things that I've seen from different labs seems to indicate that they're real in some capacity, but I don't know what real means.
yeah.
Like real what? Like I'll say this. To me, the question is very much unresolved. What are these things? Where do they come from? If they're fake, like how were they made and why were they made? Because I don't think you probably know more about this than I do, but I don't think there's any disputation about their age, right? Like we agree that these mummies are like at least 1,000 years old. So why was somebody cobbling together these very intricate taxonomical structures with metal bands and eggs inside? What the hell is that? Yeah. So again, like even the most prosaic explanation that somebody, some tribe, some cult was just making these things. Okay, well, what the hell is that? Why were they making it? What inspired them to make it? Like, why 3 fingers? Like, the consistency of these objects is pretty remarkable. And I guess if there was part of like a religious ceremony or something, you'd go, okay, well, then I would expect that to be consistent. But I feel like I keep seeing the results replicated, and the results that I keep seeing are these things were not manufactured. These are real.
Yeah. I agree. The more that comes out, the more fascinated I am by it, because you're right. I'm with you. I want to see where it goes, what's going to come of it. I think the University of Tennessee might be the biggest study I'm looking forward to. They got about $500,000. They're going to get one of the bodies to study it. And
I mean, as sort of, I don't know what the word is, maybe bigoted as this might sound, like I want an American lab to be doing this. I just don't know whether I can trust Mexican labs or whatever. I just don't know the quality of the science there. I assume it's good, but I don't know. I'd much rather have it, come from an organization that I at least have some familiarity with.
Sure. No, I understand. Yeah, I get it. I would like to see all of it, right? I have cousins in Mexico who are doctors, so I know the level of schooling they had, education, like how serious things are taken. And just like here, it's all politics and just because it comes from a lab, it could be whatever. But if it's Peruvian labs and Mexican labs and Canadian labs and American lab, and you're just like, okay, now what? Okay, guys, come on, we got to take this a little more serious. So, yeah, I'm with you, and I think even the scientific community, which is why there's such a push to get them here to get studied. Because even if you want to talk about this, that, or the other, at the end of the day, we all kind of know, okay, this is where the bread and butter is for some of these labs and some of the testing and equipment that maybe they have, and let's just get that done with. So you support looking into these essentially, right?
I support looking into anything.
Sure. Yeah.
And
Well said.
these objects, whatever their origin, are just clearly fascinating.
They are. Absolutely.
Whether they're alien or they're, just some weird Peruvian shit, like fascinating. Like I want to know about that.
No, that's a great point. And the last thing I'll say about it is, I'm going to be doing a deep dive on the channel with Pavel Ibarra, who has been following the mummies and is very well connected with it, and did a great Twitter space last night on it. In contact with all the doctors, got all the information. All right, so we're going to do a deep dive and kind of catch everyone up on where we are to this point with that. So I myself are looking forward to that, because I've followed it, but not entirely. I didn't want to cover it without having all the details. But one detail that I found that Pavel told me that was interesting was, and what's maybe causing some confusion was, well, there's two kinds of bodies in these caves. There's some that are made by humans but they're made to look like these real ones, right? And so people are
like a cargo cult where they found these things. They're like, holy shit, aliens! We got to make some more of these to get their powers, whatever.
Yeah, exactly. And so people are like, oh, they're fake. No. There's two kinds here, right? So they're saying the ones we're presenting are the real ones, not these fake ones. But yes, those do exist as well. And I think there's definitely some confusion there that people aren't aware of that. And myself, I was like, oh, okay. Again, I'm with you. No matter what the answer is, it's fascinating how this came to be. Even if someone hoaxed the whole thing, like, holy shit, okay, amazing. How did you do this?
And why?
So I'm with you. And why?
All of that stuff. I mean,
yeah.
So much of this field is obviously it's about dealing with the external, but the reasons that the external is so compelling is because it talks about the internal. I mean, ultimately, I think what everybody in this field is kind of seeking is, what does it tell us about us? Who are we? And so if you've got an element of some Peruvian hoaxer 1500 years ago saying, I'm going to fuck these people up, I want to know about that. I want to know why. I want to understand.
Guys, this is going to be so funny in 1,000 years when they find these bodies. Yeah, this is going to be hilarious. That's commitment to a bit, right? Like that is commitment to the bit. No, for sure. Well, look, Michael, let's jump to some fan questions here. Shout out to everyone watching, hanging out with us. Thank you guys so much. Here's an interesting comment that says, give Doty a chance. A lot of what he said in spaces recently can easily be verified.
I mean, to me, you have to go a lot further. Like once your credibility to me is destroyed, you have to do a lot to rebuild it. And his job was to destroy credibility. So part of disinformation is putting out verifiable facts. I mean, that's a hallmark of disinformation, is you put out this true thing and this true thing so that you can put out this false thing. So yeah, maybe what he's saying can be easily be verified, but that doesn't mean that much to me.
No, nothing against this person, but that is not true. It cannot be verified. And in fact, right now, Doty is pushing a quote unquote whistleblower who his Twitter handle is whistleblower. Okay. And this guy is in jail currently, and he talks through his girlfriend through another thing, and they do these spaces and they just say the craziest stuff. And Doty's behind this guy. Like,
yeah, I think we can do better.
Think for yourself, please. But I personally, again, why would there's just so many other people, credible people to get behind. So Mauricio says NASA Habitable Worlds Observatory, May 2027. It's on NASA website. Found it interesting. Do you know anything about it? I don't even know what that means. Habitable Worlds
I think that might be a new telescope that's launching in 2027. I'm just going to look it up. NASA Habitable.
Oh, that's interesting. Well, 2027 keeps coming up, that date, right? Like, that's kind of crazy.
Yeah, it's a telescope. Would be the first telescope designed specifically to search for signs of life on planets orbiting other stars. So yeah, it's a new telescope.
Wow, I love it.
Yeah, cool.
Right?
Shit.
That sounds cool. Yeah, that sounds great.
And so you have to go. You also have to think to yourself, all right, so NASA's spending how many billions on this? Why? I mean, why? Yes, it is one of the primary questions of humanity. Are we alone? And so it would make sense that they would launch something like this, but I'm guessing there's a lot of priorities NASA has. And the fact that they're elevating this one, habitable worlds, okay. I mean, to me, that's just another data point. That's interesting. What do they know?
Sure. And it can't be like, oh, we're searching for habitable worlds so we can go there in a spaceship next week. They must have something that they maybe want this to help confirm, just kind of like
Yeah.
Hubble led to James Webb, right? Because it was like, oh, we're seeing stuff. Let's build something bigger and better that can focus on this thing we're curious about. And I feel like there's something with this here like
Sure. I
that.
mean, I imagine like, any space-based telescope platform, that's going to take, I don't know how long to design and build. So clearly this thing's been on the drawing board for
Yeah,
10, 15,
exactly.
20 years.
Totally.
So it's not
Totally.
like they're building this in response to something that James Webb found. But again, it's another data point. Okay, they're looking for habitable
Yeah,
worlds. That's
sure.
interesting. We should keep an eye on that. And it's also really cool.
It was right after Contact came out, and they were all like, guys, start the blueprints now. Let's go. Yeah. Eki McPhee says, for all the moderators, I just want to say thank you. You guys are on the ball. Okay. Yes. Thank you, Eki. Yes. The moderators are awesome. Monkey Boy says, Ian said titties. What? Entities? What? I don't,
Oh, did I say titties instead of entities?
I don't honestly, I don't know. No.
And
Entities, I guess.
you paid £5 to make that point. So
Yeah, he paid £5 to make that point. I agree. No, that's hilarious. Enki says, I hope Patrick has the time for this, but would he ever consider a yearly Vetters event? I would fly to the USA for that one, Vetters, and I hate planes. That's interesting.
yeah, do
Yeah,
a con.
sure. Yeah, we've talked about doing sort of in-person vetted event. And with my food background, we would have the best food. Okay, so I would make sure that we would have the best food, which is all that I care about when I go to an event. What's the food, right? Food for me is super important. I don't really drink, so I want cocktail weenies. No, better than that. I want something better. All right, let's get to those are some of our chats here. All right, guys, put your questions in all caps. That'll make it much easier for me to see. This says, why is nobody talking about the Nordics and how they control the Greys? Lou clearly stated that in his book, and everyone is like, the material. That's interesting. People have been bringing that point up a lot of like, why are we forget nuts and bolts crap? Let's talk about this, thing of experiencers are the way, right? Like that's the way to disclosure. That's interesting. I don't know. What do you think?
I think the reason that nobody's talking about it is for the reason that we talked about before, because it's just a bridge too far for too many people. Even
Yeah.
talking about the Greys, I think, is a bridge too far for most people who aren't willing to, take the sort of next logical step in their minds, which is, okay, there's craft. Well, who's flying the craft? Like, or is anybody flying the craft? Like, it's enough, I think, for most people to go, okay, there's craft. That when we don't know what they are, like that's sort of the first thing, and then you're going to start getting into the sort of so-called species.
Yeah.
I think you're going to lose a lot of people there, not because it's incorrect, although I don't know if it's correct or incorrect, but just because I don't know that people are ready to handle that in the general population.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, yeah, without question. And because there's a lot, it's kind of a loaded question, right? Because there's a lot there to say is true before you get to that, right? Like, how am I
Yeah,
going to talk about the relationship between these species if, wait, we haven't even confirmed these two species yet. Now, just speculation and theory. Oh, spitball and campfire talk. I'm all about it, and we do that a lot on this channel and in our
the
Discord and
best.
things like that, right? Yeah, it's the best. It's the most fun part to me, to be honest with you.
But when you're talking about like disclosure,
Yeah,
step by
I
step
agree.
by step by step by step.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. This Jesse says, any thoughts on BlackRock company has plans that run parallel to disclosure?
I don't know what that is. I mean, I know what BlackRock is, but I don't
Yeah.
know anything about.
Well, maybe they have their own plan for disclosure that runs parallel to our government's plan, maybe is what he's getting at.
Maybe. I don't know. I haven't heard anything about that.
No, me neither. There are these advanced tech companies, right? Like it is interesting to think, is there really this infighting between their programs and the government's programs? Do they have different ideas for what disclosure is, how is disclosure defined to each of them for them to even use that against each other. I don't know. But it's interesting. He says, what's your favorite alien race?
Vulcan, obviously. Because my
Hello.
just because
Yeah.
my eyebrow does the Spock thing and I can't control it.
Bro, you do look a little Vulcan.
I
You
know.
You got a little Vulcan in you. That's it.
Yeah.
That's it. Do you think this may be all leading up to von Braun's fake alien invasion he supposedly predicted? That's interesting. Fake alien
No,
invasion.
no,
Yeah. No.
I don't. I mean, I'm not paranoid like that. I know a lot of people are paranoid about the government, and I'm just not. So no, I mean, I don't see the benefit of faking an alien invasion. First of all, it would be like there's smart people out here that would be uncovered in about 2 seconds. I don't know what a fake alien invasion would even look like.
Exactly. What does that look like? Like,
I mean,
yeah.
I mean, people are sophisticated. I think. I mean, not individually necessarily, but collectively. When you put a collective intelligence onto something, like we tend to figure things out, which is why it's so maddening that disclosure is taking so long. Because I do feel like, as so many people have passionately articulated, part of the reason we can't make more progress on this front is because the information is so siloed that you can't get that kind of collective mental energy working on the problem. If we could, I think we'd be a lot further along.
Yeah, that's a great point. T Hammer, have you or guests look into Horan Maxwell and Paul Wallace research?
I don't know who either of those people are.
I've heard of Paul Wallace. I can't put a finger on what exactly he is, but Joran Maxwell, I don't know. It could be something with free energy, maybe, or something. But I'm not entirely sure. That's a good question.
Well, this isn't probably the guy. Oh, maybe it is. Canadian historian and anthropologist who specialized in colonial American history, focusing on Pennsylvania Germans and Native Americans in Pennsylvania. No, probably not. Probably not the same guy. No, I don't know.
Although that sounds interesting. Whatever that is.
Oh, maybe it is the same guy, because he's talking about, like, he's got a book called Escaping from Eden. Does Genesis teach that the human race was created by God or engineered by ETs? So maybe this is the same guy.
That's interesting. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of people's eyes have been opened since Diana Walsh Pasulka started talking about this stuff more. When she first came out as a UFO researcher, the parallels, the obvious parallels between contact experiences and religious texts are enormous and very much worthy of further study. Kripal obviously is doing that, and she's doing that, and other people are doing that. And yeah, I mean, that. I guess that's what I mean when I say, like, all of this is about how we learn who we are, and that is bound to be wrapped up in religions and myth making and lore. Like, all that, I think, is so compelling and such a compelling avenue of research. It just makes you, if you look at the Bible or the Quran or any religious text as far more of a literal or historical document through this lens, things start to get really interesting, I think. Really interesting. Like, I was never somebody who thought there was any sort of literal truth to the Bible, other than maybe like Jesus was a person and Thomas was a person and,
Yeah.
Moses was a person. Okay.
Sure.
But then when you go, okay, so wait a second, when Moses is talking about a burning bush talking to him, in my mind, it was always, well, I can just dismiss that out of hand because burning bushes don't talk.
Yeah.
But if you look at it through this lens and you go, well, wait, what was it that he was communicating with? Can we say maybe he actually was communicating with something? And what was the nature of that conversation and that communication? Then suddenly all of human history expands in ways that are mind-blowing to me.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. It's like the further we get away from that time, the harder it becomes to try to connect to it.
You obviously can't recreate it. There's nobody there to There's nobody left who can, speak to it. But you can pick up patterns, and you can pick up meaning, and when viewed through this context, things that seem inexplicable become more explicable. And it's just interesting. It's worth noting, and I think it's worth exploring. And I hope that college programs will eventually have sort of UAP studies programs and are able to tie them to religious studies and philosophical studies.
Yeah, 100%. No, I agree. Which would be great. And that's what college is for.
Yeah.
Exploring these ideas and right. Absolutely. Samuel says, okay, guys, we got 5 more minutes left here with Michael. We're going to go to 1:30. So just a few more questions. Samuel says right here, he says, for Michael, do you feel an obligation as an actor comedian to propagate visibility on this topic, or is this purely a personal curiosity?
I don't feel an obligation. It is purely personal. Any obligation I feel is just to get more people interested in this. Again, for personal curiosity reasons. Like I want more pressure on the government. I want people talking about this. I want people contacting their elected representatives to get to the bottom of this. And yeah, it's personal curiosity. And I also my curiosity about things is, I guess it's all informed by sort of wallowing in mystery, and sort of understanding the nature of mystery to me is so compelling. Like when you get to sort of the frayed edges of understanding, and you get to this sort of mysterious part of any field, that to me is what so compelling, whether it's biology or chemistry or this field or psychology or philosophy or history, like all that stuff. Once you get to sort of the edges of that stuff, I'm all in. Like I just love it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, well said. I love that. This is Justin. He says, has Michael seen the Trump interview where he talked about the Air Force pilots briefing him about the metal sphere going 4 times faster than his F-22? I think that was Greg Gutfeld, right? And he was briefed in the Oval
I
Office.
saw Trump talking about it.
Yeah.
To me, Trump has like a Richard Doty problem, which is I don't get. Yes, I believe that somebody talked to him about something. I'm sure that's true, but he has a problem telling the truth. He has a problem distinguishing fact from fiction. So while I believe that he probably does have some knowledge about this stuff, and maybe was briefed, maybe he wasn't, I don't know. But yeah, he's just got a credibility problem to me.
Yeah, no, I hear you. I think just for me personally, it was like, oh, a sitting president was briefed in the Oval Office by some pilots, told, do I wish maybe it was a different president? Yeah. But that's something, I guess. Maybe have they done that with Biden? Right. Will they do that with the next president? At least it's getting talked about more.
It's getting talked about. And one thing that I do think is interesting is, look, I have problems with Trump's credibility. I don't have problems with Barack Obama's credibility, and the way that he has sort of changed his tune on this topic over the years to me is really interesting.
Yeah.
The way his answers have become much more nuanced and shaded, I find that very compelling. Hillary Clinton's talked about this stuff. I find that compelling. And I know people have credibility issues with them, so you can look at Trump. But the fact is, presidents, former presidents, people with former Secretary of State, senators, former intelligence officials, like all these people are talking about this in very direct ways. So there's clearly a lot of interest at the highest reaches of the government in this. So what does that mean? I don't know. Is it just personal curiosity for them? I kind of doubt it, because they have access to information that we don't have. So it just seems like there's more to the story.
Yeah, well said, man. All right, last question here, Michael. This says, if you were not a comedian, then alternate life career path, what alternate career path would you choose?
I would probably host a UFO podcast called Vetted.
Sweet. Yeah.
And when I wasn't doing that, I would be playing poker. I would be a professional poker player and UFO enthusiast.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, I love that you play poker, man. I love poker too. I love playing it. What's your best advice for someone for poker?
You should be folding a lot more than you're folding.
That is true. That is true. Bite your time. Take your time. Wait to jump in. I agree.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I love. I mean, I need to get back to playing some poker.
You're in
All right,
Dallas, baby. You can go anytime you want.
Yeah, I mean, I play with friends and stuff. I've always played poker. Yeah, I love Texas Hold'em. Right? It's just like it's my. I used to live in Philadelphia, and I would go to down the
Parks.
Ace and head to Atlantic City.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Go play at you know, honestly
Borgata.
played it. Yeah, Borgata mainly, but would go to Trump Tower. I think I only went there once because like, dude, this place is a piece of shit. And Caesars, a few other whatever. That place is, at least at that time, was like Back to the Future 2. It was like Biff had taken over. There's barrels with fires as you're driving in Atlantic City till you get to the boardwalk. And then 8 people are offering you crack before you even get in the door. You're like, what the hell is going on here, man?
There's better options in Philly now if you want to play cards.
Yeah, well, that's a good point. It's been a minute since I've been up there. But Legend says here, Michael and Patrick, you guys are so cool. Love the show. Oh, gosh. What's your favorite street back, Mike?
Huffy?
Yeah. Huffy. Bam. That's what I'm talking about. That doesn't get better than that. Well, there you go, man. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Michael, for coming on the show, dude. This was so awesome. I really enjoyed it. Guys, again, I'll put a link in the description to go check out the other interview that I did with Michael if you want to hear his personal UFO experience that he had. It's in that interview. But yeah, this was awesome to be able to kind of hang out with the community and get your take on a lot of these current events. So, well, I don't know. Do you have like a message for anybody about this topic to sort of round us out?
Stay curious. I mean, to me, it's the joy of this topic is the mystery. In a way, I'll be disappointed when the government comes out. Yeah, it's real. Like in a way, I'll be bummed out.
That's hilarious. What am I going to do on Sunday nights now? Yeah, that's funny. No, man, great advice. I second that. And again, man, just thank you so much for coming on the show. Really appreciate it. Thank you to all the mods for handling the chat and everything you do for Vetted in the Discord and here. I couldn't do it without you guys. So thank y'all so much. And of course, to everyone watching, thank you so much for taking the time. You could be anywhere else watching anything else, and you chose to hang out with us. So my salute to you. Thank you, Vetters. We'll see you guys on tomorrow's video. Remember, every day's a gift, y'all. Peace. Thanks again, Michael.